been an important day, even though it's a public holiday, at the Zondo Commission. The former Minister of Public Enterprises, Lynne Brown, has told the inquiry into state capture that Brian Molefe's arrival as CEO at Eskom had been a spark of hope for the power utility. She says he boosted morale and allegedly solved load-shedding conundrums with the computer game Tetris. Tamala Mokhladi's been putting the shapes together for us. Tamala, good afternoon to you. Tetris, really?
Tetris. And this, according to Lynne Brown, speaks to the charm and the exuberance that Brian Molefe brought to Eskom. She said at the time he arrived, Eskom employees were demoralized, load shedding was at an all-time high, and he basically thought outside of the box, brought in new energy, he'd work overtime, so she thought it was a good boost for Eskom. But as it turns out, we know that there were some deals that Molefe entered into with Gupta-linked companies on behalf of Eskom, deals that eventually got him into hot water with the minister himself.
She also says she had nothing to do with Brian Molefe coming to Eskom. It wasn't her decision.
Yes, she does. She says that she had met him before and she had heard of him. She said that he had a good reputation within the SOEs and within government circles. This is something that Zola Zodzi, the former Eskom chair, had also sort of testified to Dr. Ben Ngubane. So Brian Molefe came very highly recommended, but she says that she had never really met of him. She had never really met him officially, and that he was then seconded because as an instruction, and then also Anuj Singh came through. So she seemed to say that they were imposed almost on the SOEs after being seconded from Transnet.
So Anuj Singh is interesting because there seems to be a contradiction between what she says and what he says, right?
Yes, because Anuj Singh, according to his testimony, it was the minister who made the recommendation or the request that Brian Molefe be seconded and that he follow. So this is a very interesting turn of events. Lynne Brown says, it was a long time ago. Perhaps she could have made a request for Brian Molefe because, he was so good at what he did. And she painted a glowing picture of how he tried to turn the SOE around. But then it turns out with the issue of the 1064 locomotives, of course, the deal with that, I think, billions are said to have been paid, and he says that he saved the rail utility billions. But as it turns out, the deal itself was ballooned way beyond what the estimates were initially.
I mean, it shows you the value of cross-examination, doesn't it? Certainly we have these two differing versions from these two people, Anuj Singh and Lynne Brown, both giving evidence under oath.
Yes, and Lynne Brown says that she inherited a utility. In fact, she says SOEs in general were in big trouble a long time ago. And she tried to turn it around, and at great personal cost to herself. At one stage she said that it hurt her family and those around her to be labeled a Gupta minister, a minister who was captured by the Guptas. And this was her opportunity to put her side across. But when you look at the issue of oversight, she says that as minister, she had no direct issue about who was moved from where. In fact, she was told and informed as and when the then President Jacob Zuma made the decisions about who would be seconded or not, if indeed he did make those decisions as the head of state.
There's a lot that goes on around Brian Molefe, and there's a lot of sort of conversations people have about the impact that he had on Eskom. She's clearly putting it forward under oath that she believed he has a good impact. We've seen, I think it was Andre de Ruyter, it may have been, or other people at Eskom who, when they took over, had to say, well, look, the problem was maintenance was neglected. So, this whole period and how Eskom was run at this time is highly contested.
Highly contested, Stephen. But I found interesting in her testimony last week the fact that Eskom and maintenance was such a big issue because already the power utility was losing billions just on maintenance alone, where some of the operational hardware had been in place for over 20, 30 years, and it was basically just wear and tear. And having to replace that all of a sudden in one go was a big challenge because already the economy was ailing at the time, and they had to come and find deals, had to find ways to get value add. And I think this is where the problem comes in, because oversight and the overreach thereof. The minister says that she trusted that the executives would do the right thing, and because of how things work at state on that level, she gets reports about problems maybe even months after they start. However, the executives themselves as well seem to have a view, if you listen to Molefe's evidence, if you listen to Dr. Ben Ngubani's evidence, that they were tasked with driving a transformational agenda. But how do you drive a transformational agenda when you have to deal with issues of the PFMA and other legislation that guides you? So this is the conundrum that is facing this whole question of state capture.
Salim Essa, who, you know, we never see, but we hear of all the time at the Zondo Commission. I mean, he's the great star. We're not going to see him testifying, I suspect. She's now sort of saying she's met him once or twice, but he didn't influence decisions.
Yes, she says she's met him once or twice. You know, she was introduced to him on occasion by Anoj Singh, and he always seemed to be around. The name of Salim Essa, she knew him through his links to Trillion, but she never really had any direct dealings with him, so to speak. And she was quite surprised when his name was thrown into the mix. In terms of the media reporting about the deals that his entity had been entering in with the state-owned entities, Transnet and Eskom. But he seems to be quite the wheeler and dealer, and she says that she wouldn't have had any direct contact with him, and he wouldn't have had any influence in terms of the decisions that she made.
So she's obviously in this position. She's got to testify again. I think Easter Monday is it that she's testifying. It's not called Easter Monday anymore. Would she do anything different in hindsight?
In hindsight, she says that she would have done things a little bit differently. She says that in terms of operational and what she has known now, she would have interrogated things a lot more and not had so much faith in those around her. We've heard this before. We've heard others say that Brian Molefe famously says that he trusted too much. So this is the question. When it comes to the issue of responsibility, when those who are tasked with managing and protecting those state-owned entities trust others and, you know, hand over their responsibility, where does the buck stop, Stephen? Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo has asked this question very, very repeatedly.
Tamala Mcloudy on that note. Thanks very much indeed. Do appreciate it. Tamala Mcloudy, of course, covering the Zondo Commission for us.